We're here at Gasworks to speak to Guatemalan artist Naufus Ramírez-Figueroa about his new exhibition, God's Reptilian Finger. Can you tell us a little bit about where the inspiration for your works come from? I know that they're based quite a lot on Guatemalan history and society.
Often they're based on that, but they get transformed. And also, even though it really inspires me, since I have lived abroad a lot since a child, it gets a bit tiring to explain details to people. So I think, in a way, I just create works which give the sensation of something, which gave me a feeling from some kind of my experience of Guatemala, but not actually try to tell people like a history lesson and stuff.
So it's not important to you necessarily that your audience would understand anything about what the starting point for the works is?
No, I mean that is my basis, and I stand behind my inspiration, but it's not important. I mean, not even in Guatemala do many people care about Guatemalan history, so it's not important. The works in both these rooms came from a summer I spent in Weimar, Germany, and I was very alone, and not many people spoke English in Weimar, and I was in this early 20th century house for artists, but I was the only artist, and I watched a lot of YouTube videos, and I ended up watching a lot of YouTube videos about conspiracy. And of course, with conspiracy thinking, you can always explain something by something else, or you can explain everything. And so I got really fascinated by it. And so this is the basis of this exhibition. But I also see conspiracy as like an easy way to explain things, just by going through some kind of an escape rather than actually looking at facts. But that was the basis of this exhibition.
What are the sculptures actually made of?
Well, in this series and in other ones, in the last few years, I used polystyrene. Originally, I started using polystyrene for my works for the Guangzhou Biennial, which was presented last year. And I liked how polystyrene, even though it's a material that's supposed to pollute the earth forever, it's also loses its shape really easily, and is very vulnerable to many things like weather and acids and fire. So I liked kind of like the garbage vulnerability of it, but also its supposed endless polluting qualities.
Do you actually carve it to make the shapes?
I carve it, and when I first started using it, I tried gluing pieces together, which is what many people do. But it's a real hassle, so it's better, I find, to just do it out of one solid block, so you don't have to worry about gluing.
And then you put resin on top?
Yeah, I mean, the resin, a lot of artists actually use polystyrene, but they don't really say it at the end because it's covered in fiberglass or other things. So with my pieces, since polystyrene is a bit part of the meaning of them, then I try to do sort of a watercolor effect on them, where there is a thickness of resin on it, which makes it hard and able to travel and stuff. But at the same time, you can still see what it's made out of inside.
So was this piece specifically made for this space?
Yes. Actually, I made this work already in Guatemala on a smaller scale, but the shipping was incredible. I guess because Guatemala doesn't have much commerce to England, I don't know why, but it was pretty much the whole budget. So then, we decided that maybe I was going to make it here instead, so at least I could enjoy a bit of London and not have to just give it to the shipping company.
Can you tell us about this work in here?
Well, this work, as I said before, about it's stemming from watching a lot of YouTube videos. One winter stemmed from convolution of different sort of, I don't know, stories, including, including, I have to say, after this YouTube sort of binge, I had to read the Book of Mormon. And in one of the stories, it talks about, because God sent a bunch of people over to the Americas to colonize it, and they all failed him. So finally, he sent over the Jaredites almost at the end, and he put them in wooden submarines, but they didn't have any lights. So in the book, suddenly his finger appears and touches these stones, which begin to glow, and which people can take in the submarines over to the Americas. Well, this kind of joined together with this whole David Icke reptilian race conspiracy theory, and so it just became this installation, although, I don't think anybody who really believes the reptilian conspiracy or anybody who is Mormon would identify with this installation, but it sort of became all these images sort of amalgamated together.
So it's basically rocks that are glowing, and then obviously here you're standing by, presumably, God's reptilian finger.
Yeah, which is kind of became like a finger of like this wizard or something with this constellation glowing from its skin.
Which is what the little dots, the holes through it.
Which you can see better in the dark, but yeah.
We are effectively in the submarine.
Well, that, or I don't know, I think here in this space, it feels more like you're in nothingness, just floating matter and nothingness. So I think it's more about that. As I said, about maybe the starting point of my work being Guatemalan history, but at the end not really that mattering. It's the same thing here. I think I just wanted to create a sensation in this works, a sensation of in this dark room, but also in the other room, with this golden geometry and this kind of fleshy thing sticking out.
What role does humour play in your work?
Well, for me, humor is an important element. I know that when I started doing exhibitions, and I was pretty, this whole theme about the Guatemalan Civil War was very present for me. But the other artists that were doing things around this, their aesthetic was very black and white, and I remember that during the war, or people who were affected by the war directly, there's always a lot of jokes and humor around it. So I sort of felt like there was something important in that, and that even though this work is not about that theme, I think humor has remained with me as a tool of working.
And what about performance? I mean, that's quite a large part of your oeuvre.
Well, I have to say that the first medium I sort of developed, or that sort of came out all right, was performance for me. And I invested a lot of time into it. At one point doing a performance a month. I've sort of, I think I take more of my time now. I don't do that many performances a year, and they sort of, they take a lot out of me, as one can imagine, since there's no way to edit out one's mistakes or what one has done. But I think it's always been an important medium for me, and it probably will be, forever.
And you're doing a performance in association with this, but at Tate?
It is a commission for a new work, and I'm doing it around sort of this 1970s horror movie aesthetics, and sort of a childhood as well. And I'll be working also with a group of children and kind of like monster props. And I'm not sure how it's going to develop, but I'm happy to be able to play with those things.
Do you ever repeat your performances, or are they completely one-offs?
I try to never repeat them, but about 2 years ago my house burned down, and so did all my archives. So I did repeat some stuff just so I can have a record of what I did in the past. But and then I thought this would become like a larger project than me repeating, but then that would be kind of like dwelling on, and I don't even know if it was good work that I did before. So yeah, I have repeated myself, but mostly only because of that thing, of the loss of my archives. Since the fire, I've sort of been considering more like the camera and the video is part of the work, whereas before it was very much about the room and myself. So I think that thing has changed for me.